Today we are going to be painting on this 6 by 6 inch 1/8 inch Baltic birch piece. However, this project would fit perfectly on any surface. We're going to put this background that I have in the back of this tag. I'm going to show you how to do it on wood, and I'm going to show you how to do it on paper. So here I have two watercolor tags that I've already painted front and back with black. We're going to use the metallic gold, which I like. I'm also going to use a Stampendous stamp, which is this one. It's a big one. So I only have to stamp these once. If you don't have this stamp, you could certainly use whatever you have for stamps that you would like in your background. This is just a nice script stamp, and I can do both of these at the same time. So let's start with a sponge. This is a mushroom sponge. It's a Martha Stewart sponge. It actually has a flat side, has a little handle. I'm going to get this slightly damp, and I just dunked it in some water, and it is just damp to the touch. It is not soaking wet. I'm going to tap into my paint and load my sponge. And because I added water to this sponge, I'm going to have a little bit longer working time than I would have had normally. So I've got paint on my sponge. Just going to tap that paint all over I'm going to lay that down right over the top of my tags, and I'm doing two at the same time because I don't want to waste any paint, and I'm just going to press. And I'm not pressing very hard. Pull it off. Perfect. I'm going to reload my stamp. Position it right over the top of my wood block. I think I want this actually to look more like this. And again, I'm just going to give it some firm pressure. Perfect. And I want to know which is my top and my bottom, so I'm going to put my book paper over here. You wouldn't have to use book paper. You could use music paper. You could actually paint this. Add the paper at all. Line it up. Check your edges. I always check under my edges to make sure that all my edges are sticking down. There's nothing worse than starting painting and realizing that your paper is coming off. Let's give it a quick scrape. And I just kind of scrape some of that decoupage off the end, although it'll dry clear and it's not a problem. I have transferred my gnome shade to, you can see the pencil outline I believe, to the black side of my wood panel. Now, if I were using the tag, I would transfer my gnome right here to the center, and I would do the same exact procedure. We're going to use some fawn to undercoat our gnome. The next step is to shade around my paper border with asphaltum. Now, you don't have to use paper in your border. You could actually paint this. And in the PDF, I will have all of the alternative painting instructions. And I don't want this to be terribly dark. So I'm going to really do some blending of my brush. If you are using paper, your paint will flow somewhat differently on your paper, depending upon the quality of your paper. This is actually a newsprint, and my paint definitely moves differently on this newsprint. I'm going to let this dry before I try to go over the edges. And I don't mind if this paint flows out into the center of my paper border. This one is almost dry enough. I want these a little bit darker in this area. Okay, that's perfect. Let that dry, and I'll be back. We're going to use a little bit of warm white and a dry brush. Of course, use whatever you like for a dry brush, but I like these Jo Sonja's Sure Touch oval dry brushes, especially on paper. When you're working on paper, you want to be careful that you're not removing too much of your paper. And we're going to just dry brush, just kind of lightly and randomly, right across our paper board. We're going to use a little metallic gold and our dry brush, removing much of the paint on our paper towel, and then right over that white, or that warm white that we just did, I'm going to dry brush a little bit of metallic gold. All that does is give it a slight metallic sheen, and it also pulls that metallic gold from your background into the border area. We are going to use Santa Red, and we are going to base coat the elf's hat. I'm going to add a second coat. I'm going to use some jack-o'-lantern orange and a dry brush, and we are going to lighten our hat. And we're going to lighten by just dry brushing the entire hat. We're going to take Neon Scorching Yellow, lightly wash that Neon Scorching Yellow right over the top of our hat. And as I get too much on there, I just kind of wipe it off. Let's use a little bit of white peach on the nose. Okay, we're going to let that dry and put a second coat on it. It actually took 3 coats to cover the nose with white peach, so that's just an FYI. Next we're going to add in just the basic part of the beard. So if I look at a picture of my gnome, I can see that my beard comes out like this. And like most beards, it kind of goes in different directions. And I'm just roughing it in here. This does not have to be beautiful. We'll get to that. Right now we're just laying in the basic general area of where our beard is going to lie and how the hair follicles are going to move. And I can go right over the top of my cookie area, and I can go right over the top of my boots. So I have the first layer on there. Using that same brush, I'm going to go back over the top of it and just add a second coat. And all I'm doing is just building layers right now. I'm not even doing any shading, any highlighting. I don't want to put these on so dark that I can no longer see my fawn underneath. But I do want to just kind of rough in where my beard is going to go. So this will be the second coat. I have positioned the word love onto my banner, and I'm going to transfer it. Now I'm going to darken that in slightly with my pencil so I can see it better. Perfect. Now, you can use black paint to do this. I personally love these little Posca markers. They're an acrylic paint marker, and you have such an incredible amount of control with these. That looks pretty good. Then all I have to do is use my marker, fill this in. Of course, I could do the same thing with some black paint. See how easy that was?